Good morning, Year 4, and welcome to your next maths lesson. Okay, our learning objective today is to divide by 100. So pause the video now while you write today's date and learning objective. Okay, brilliant. So our success criteria today is to be able to apply your knowledge of dividing numbers by 10 to be able to divide by 100, and to be able to apply your knowledge of dividing by 100 when solving more complex problems. So let's review your learning from this week so far. You've been learning to divide by 10. So here I want you to match the correct calculation to the correct visual representation. So you've got a calculation on this side and you've got the answer represented using Dean's. So you can actually write out the calculation with the correct answer next to it, and then we'll go through the answers. So pause the video now while you review this. Okay, let's have a look at those answers. So the first one, 50 divided by 10, the answer would have been 5. So you should have matched up the answer there with number 5. So well done if you got that correct, because 5 groups of 10 is equal to 50. The next calculation, 70 divided by 10, the answer would have been 7. So 7 groups of 10 equals 70. 70 divided by 10 equals 7. The next one, 40 divided by 10, the answer would have been 4. So 4 groups of 10 are equal to 40. And the last one, 60 divided by 10, the answer was 6. 6 groups of 10 are equal to 60. So well done. Okay, so when we're thinking about dividing by 100, the numbers that we're dividing, the number becomes 100 times smaller, and that's going to be our STEM sentence today, Year 4. So our STEM sentence is, when we divide a number by 100, a number becomes 100 times smaller. Can you say this STEM sentence now aloud, please? Okay, fantastic. So here I just wanted to show you those numbers becoming 100 times smaller. So here you can see we've got 100 represented in Dean's. So 100 divided by 100 equals 1. So that means that 100 is equal to 100 ones. Here we've got 1,000 represented in Dean's. So 1,000 divided by 100 equals 10. So that means 1,000 is equal to 100 tens. Okay, so to help us to divide by 100, we're going to think about groups of 100 using a tens frame. So we're going to have a look at the first question here, the tens frame. So we can see that we have got 3 groups of 100. Let's count the hundreds. So we've got 100, 200, 300. So the question is 300 divided by 100 equals. So how many groups of 100 are in 300? We've got 1, 2, 3 groups here. So 300 is equal to 3 groups of 100. So that means 300 divided by 100, the answer there is 3. Because there are 3 groups of 100 in 300. Let's have a look at the next question. So we've got 700 divided by 100. So on our tens frame here, we've got 700 represented using 100 place counters. So let's have a look. Let's just count them. So we've got 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. So 700 divided by 100. How many groups of 100 have I got there? Can you say the answer? That's right. We've got 7 groups of 100. So 700 equals 7 groups of 100. So that means 700 divided by 100, the answer is 7. And let's see if you can work out the last one and write down the answers yourself. So this time we have got 1,000 represented using our place value counters on our tens frame. So let's counting hundreds: 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 10 hundredths, which is equal to 1,000. So 1,000 divided by 100. How many groups of 100 do we have there? That's right, we've got 10 groups of 100. So the answer, 1,000 divided by 100, the answer is 10. So we've got 10 groups of 100. Okay, we can also use base 10 to help us divide by 100. So our base 10 is our Deans here. So I've got a calculation here for us to look at together. So the calculation is 2,100 divided by 100. So how is that question? How can we represent that question using Deans? Have a think, and then I'll show you how I would represent that question using Deans. Okay, so if I go down here, you can see we make the number 2,100 using Deans by using 2,000 and then a 100. So now we want to think about, we've got 2,100, so that's 2,000s and 100. So 1,000 is equal to 10 hundredths. So 1,000 is equal to 10 hundredths. 2,000s is equal to 20 hundredths. So that means there are 21 hundredths altogether in 2,100. So we're thinking about how many hundreds are in 2,100. So there are 21 hundredths altogether. So 2,100 is equal to 21 groups of 100. So that means that 2,100 divided by 100, the answer is 21. There are 21 groups of 100 in 2,100. So let's have a look at this next question. 4,200 divided by 100 equals. I wonder if you can pause the video now and have a go at drawing 4,200 using Deans. Okay, so 4,200 would look a bit like this. So we've got 4 groups of 1,000 there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've got 200 groups of 100. 1, 2. So to work out 4,200 divided by 100, we want to know how many hundreds there are in 4,200. So 4,200 is equal to, so I'm just going to move this out the way so we can, so 4,200 is equal to 4,000s and 200s. 1,000 is equal to how many hundreds? Yes, that's right, it's 10 hundredths. So 2,000 is equal to how many hundreds? Yeah, it's 20 hundredths. And 3,000 is equal to how many hundreds do you think? Right, it's 30 hundredths. So 4,000 are equal to 40 hundredths. So there are 40, we've got 40 hundredths in 4,000 plus these 2 extra hundreds here. So that means there are 42, oh, that didn't type, 42 hundreds altogether. So 4,200 in 4,200 there are 42 groups of 100. So that means 4,200 divided by 100 is 42. Okay, so we can use a place value chart to help us divide by 100, and this is what we used last week to help us multiply by 100 as well. So we learnt last week that when we multiply by 100, a number gets 100 times bigger, so the digit moves 2 places to the left. And this week we are using division. So when we divide by 100, a number gets 100 times smaller, so the digit moves 2 places to the right. So here I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here you can see at the top, when the number's becoming bigger, multiplying by 100, the numbers are moving 2 spaces to the left, and when we divide, it's moving 2 spaces to the right. So here I've got the calculation 1 times 100 equals. So here we have a place value counter. So when we multiply 1 by 100, the counter moves 2 spaces across. So 1 times 100, now we've got 100. So 1 times 100 equals 100. And then when we divide 100 by 100, we move the place value counter back 2 spaces across. So 1, 2. So 100 divided by 100 equals 1, because we've got 1 in our ones column now. So let's look at this in a bit more detail here. So we're going to use some place value counters to show how we can divide 200 by 100. So 200 divided by 100. So when we divide by 100, the number becomes 100 times smaller, so the digits move 2 places to the right. So again, we're going to move our 100 counters 2 spaces to the right. So 1, 2. So now we've moved the numbers into the ones column. I'm just going to replace those counters with ones. So now we've got 200 divided by 100, and the answer is 2 because we've got 2 ones. Here we've got 400 divided by 100, so we move our 400s across 2 spaces to the right. 1, 2, and I'm going to replace those hundreds with ones again because we're now in the ones column. So 400 divided by 100, I've now got 4 ones, so my answer is 4. Okay, so let's look at some 4-digit numbers dividing by 100. So the first question here I've got is 2000 divided by 100 equals. So I've represented the number 2000 in my thousands column. So 2000 divided by 100, and I'm going to move my 2000s across 2 spaces to the right. 1, 2. So now I have got, write it on my answer, I've got 2 10s and no ones. So remember, we have to use a 0 as a placeholder in that ones column. So 2000 divided by 100 equals 20. Okay, let's try the next question. So we've got 4000 this time. So I'm going to represent 4000s using place value counters. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 4000 this time. So to divide by 100 again, we move our place value counters 2 spaces to the right. So 4000 by 100, we move across 2 spaces, 1, 2, and then we can write our answer. So our answer is we've got 4 10s and 0 ones. So we've got the answer 40 then. So 4000 divided by 100 equals 40. Look at how we can use numbers now to represent to solve our question. So 1200 divided by 100. So I've got 1200. Okay, so we move our numbers 2 spaces to the right. So I'm going to get rid of those zeros there, so you can see the hundreds move in 2 spaces, 1, 2, and the thousands move in 2 spaces, 1, 2. So now you can see that 1200 divided by 100 equals 12. Okay, I want you to have a go at the next question. So we've got, the next question is 2500. So 2500. 2500. Can you have a go at thinking about what do you think 2500 is divided by 1000? And pause the video now while you have a go at that question. Okay, so let's look what happens. So 2500, so our number moves two spaces across. So 1, 2. So we just lose the zeros there. So we lose those zeros because they're after the ones. So we've got 2,500 divided by 100 equals 25. Okay. And now see if you can solve the last two calculations, the last calculations here, which is 8,400 divided by 100. And I want you to have a go at this question down here and write the inverse calculation. So 6,700 divided by 100 equals, and then can you write the inverse calculation? So something divided by 100 equals 6,700. Pause the video while you have a go at those questions. Okay, well done. So 8,400 divided by 100 would be 84. And here we've got 6,700 divided by 100 equals 67. And then 67 times 100 equals 6,700. So checkpoint question. Can you match the calculation with the correct answer? So you can just write this calculation out. So 4,200 divided by 100, is the answer going to be 420, or is the answer going to be 42? If you need to draw a place value chart to help you, then do so. So pause the video now while you answer this question. Okay, let's check how you did. So 4,200 divided by 100. So the numbers 4,200 would move on your place value chart 2 places to the right, which means our answer would be 42. So it equals 42. Okay, so if you got that question right, you can start on step 2. If you still need to practice doing the division and practicing the scales, start on step 1. So here today is step 1. If you want to pause the video and have a go at step 1. Here is step 2 for you to have a go at. Here is step 3 for you to have a go at today. And here, if you're looking to challenge yourself, is the problem solving questions on digging deeper. And then turn the page now to find the answers. Here are step 1 answers. Here are step 2 answers. Here are step 3 answers. And then the digging deeper answers. Okay, brilliant. Well done, Year 4 on dividing numbers, by 100.